Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser currently here in Genoa Bay, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up for some pretty ambitious cruising someday. If that's the sort of thing you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. And this week is carrying on with ongoing maintenance with both Geordie and Zephyrus. You can see the port side of Geordie here has been sanded down in some places right to the wood because I didn't do any bright work last year, so it needed a little bit of remedial work. Anyway, it's gonna look great, just lots more sanding to do. Anyway, let's jump back in time and pick up where we left off last week. And as always, I'd like to send a huge thanks to my PayPal and Patreon supporters. As you all know, it's you that keep the show going. I'm very grateful for it. Cheers, let's get to work. So cool, so cool, so cool. All right, so this is only going to be here for a little while, but we have to get a lot done while it's here. So a lot of it is unloading stuff that I don't want on the boat over the winter downtown Victoria, namely all the structure for the upper canopy. Whether or not it'll ever go back on again, that's another matter. And believe it or not, the upper helm windshield is going to be taken off here and stored here because there's really no reason to have it up on deck. It is simply sitting out in the weather for no reason until I put the glass in it, until I rebuild the cabin top so it fits properly. Ironically, it has to just sit and wait. Gosh knows what the boat's going to look like without it. It's going to look fine, right? It'll look like Zephyrus, which is a beautiful boat. Okay then, one of the other reasons I wanted to put Geordie in the shed, at least briefly, was to see how she fits. I mean, it's already been noted, if you've been following along, that neither Geordie nor Zephyrus actually fit in the shed. As you can see, sticking out about 6 feet there. And honestly, we'd like to have a little more room up at the front. Zephyrus, I can just get past the anchor, but with Geordie, I mean, you'd never actually set it there, but that's the max possible position. I can barely get past the anchor. Now, this shed actually has what's called a bump out. In other words, a 2-foot extension. That was to deal with a previous owner's boat that didn't fit, that stuck off the end. We're not going to do that because it's impossible to walk around the front. So, because neither boat fits, I'm going to extend the shed. I'm going to extend it, I think, 10 feet. To be accurate, it's 9 and something because it'll be a module of this steel cladding. So it's a very strange number. It's 3 feet minus what it shrunk when it got rolled. So anyway, that's a project that's down the line a little bit. But I do want to be able to set up this end of the platform to be more useful for working on boats. And for all of these monks, seeing as we board on the stern, it is super inconvenient to be crawling in and out the window all the time because we can't get to the stern. So in the very near future, I am going to modify this whole section here, which has been modified twice. This little extension here was added at some point relatively recently, and it's not very well done. In fact, it's really sketchy. This section here is a little bit more robust, but actually still not all that fantastic. Anyway, we're going to get into all of that as I do the work. So what I want to do now, though, is center Geordie in the shed and a little bit further back. I want to try and decide how far back is comfortable to walk past the anchor. This anchor sticks out further than either Zephyr's or Pome's will, so if we can walk past this anchor, each other boat will fit. Plus, I'm actually going to scribe the shape of the hull, because as Geordie is the largest boat that'll ever be in here, at least in current ownership, I'm going to build the modular platform as close to Geordie's hull as possible, which means it'll be relatively close to the other two boats. Okay then, so that is 2 feet further back than the max forward it ever could be, which wasn't really meaningful, but that's a very comfortable pass. And if you look down there, you can see that the boat is actually, it's exactly 14 inches off the dock down there, and it's the same on this side. Thank goodness for a nice still day. Okay, so what I'm going to do while it's in this position is scribe a line that follows the shape of the hull on the current deck, and Geordie can leave then, and at some future date those marks will still be visible enough that I can build whatever modular business I'm going to be able to do to bring the boats in. I'm actually going to turn the boat around and bring her back in stern in. A couple of reasons. One, it's a lot easier to unload off the swim grid, all the stuff I want to bring out of it, which is a lot of tools. And two, I also just want to get an idea of where, I mean, I can tell it's only going to come to at least those cleats there somewhere, but there's lots of rubber padding there, so there won't be any problem bringing her in. I'm really happy with this. There's only one thing to confirm, and that's if I extend the shed by 10 feet, does it actually fit? Let's go find out. Okay, for a very rough benchmark, I'm going to say that that foam block is pretty much at the back of the shed. Okay, let's go have a look. All right then, so I've transferred the foam block to where I can get it with this tape, and I'm going to work my way out. Again, this is hardly rocket science. Okay, 10 feet, and we're not actually fully in yet, so we may have to compromise a little bit. Let's figure out what 3 of those panels is. Okay, so then this, I thought it was actually galvanized steel, but it's aluminum. Do you think I would have known that by now? Okay, so this stuff is 30.5 inches. 30.5 inches. So let's say it's 30, 10 feet is 120 inches. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 panels. The thing is, we can easily make it 10 feet plus 30 inches. Once you're building a little more wood and one more set of panels isn't the end of the world. The problem is, as we expand the shed, we pay more moorage. And there's no sense paying more moorage than you really need. Maybe I need to revisit how comfortably we can get past the front here. You know, it means an awful lot to have lots of room up here, because this is the shop. This is where you have room to do stuff. And after all, Geordie is 4 feet longer than Zephyrus and 12 feet longer than Pome. So designing the shed to fit Geordie perfectly is not really a priority. So if you notice, when I was measuring, the transom would have actually fit in. It would just be the swim grid that was hanging out. And if we turn around, it would be the anchor that's hanging out, but not quite actually, because my platform that I'm going to build back here when the boats come in stern first is actually going to be above the swim grids. So the swim grids can actually slide underneath that platform, meaning we can step aboard the into the companion, not the, well, the door, transom door, right off this platform, which should be very, very comfortable. We take the swim grid out of the equation, and the anchor, which is hanging off a bit too much now, will just barely sit inside. Anyway, I think this is what makes the most sense. After all, it's not my shed, and the boat who the shed owner owns will fit very, very nicely. Okay, let's do some scribing. Okay, so all I really need to do is make some marks perpendicular to the face of the hull, and I'll just move them along in a couple of feet at a time, guessing where perpendicular is. Again, this is not rocket science. about there somewhere. Whoop, there. All right, then I'll do the other side, and the only thing I have to remember after that is the length of this stick. And the stick is 39 inches long. As long as I remember that, we have a system. Okay, I'm going to turn Geordie around and back her back in, but first I have to get rid of the dinghy because I don't want to be backing back in with the dinghy there. So happily I can just tuck it beside the shed where there's that tiny bit of room. That is so cool. The sink for the new galley, which I've been carting around for 2 years. Look what I found. Packed it up. Scampi fries. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, oh. You know, this mess has been driving us nuts since we got the shed, so good chance to take advantage of taking this down. All right. Alright then, I'm all set. I'm gonna take Geordie out and swap him and bring the surface back in. I've decided to leave the upper helm windshield in place because I still have a lot of bridge deck time this year, and it's just much more pleasant to have it around. It makes me feel a little less exposed. Okay, we're off. Absolutely lovely. We got a big blow coming, so I thought it might be a neat idea to bring Geordie right in here in the little inlet behind the boat shed, where it's lovely and protected, and I'm really well anchored, but I'm not quite in deep enough water for the extreme tide we're going to get in the next 24 hours, and I don't really feel like moving too far close this way because, of course, this is an alley for boats to get through. So it didn't really work out, but it was a good idea. Looks great. And well, good morning. So it takes a couple of days for varnish in this temperature this time of year to get hard enough to sand. And of course you do have to sand, just scuff it enough between coats for proper adhesion. There are certain products, and there is always some debate about whether or not you really do need to sand between coats of varnish. And I don't want to get involved in that. I've done enough research to not know, but I certainly want to err on the side of caution. I hate sanding between coats, as everyone does, but it's just a very, very light scuffing, and it doesn't actually take that long at all. The point is you do not want to take too much material off because, of course, that's just defeating the purpose of building up layers of varnish. Okay, let's get to it. I'm using some somewhat worn out 220 on a sanding sponge, and just enough to make the surface just a little bit smooth and a little bit chalky. That's all we need. Be very careful on edges because it's easy to put too much pressure on an edge and then cut the varnish right through. So the option there is to just do it with just your hand, and then that way you have a nice eased edge. And while I'm making dust anyway, I'm just going to do some final fairing on these Dutchmans that I put in here a couple months ago now, and I just want to make sure that they're ready for what I would call a scratch coat, or first coat of primer that will really tell me what imperfections are still here. I can feel something here, but needs a little bit of filler. Anyway, we'll get that advanced a little bit. This is Petit brand Easy Prime. I find it absolutely fantastic stuff. Very sandable, good coverage. Really shows up the imperfections well. So I'll be able to fix this up. Honestly, that probably is good enough right as it is, but we'll tidy it up a little bit. Honestly, that looks pretty good. All right, now don't be too alarmed about the quality of this primer coat and, for instance, any little dribbles on the deck. This is just a scratch coat. I'm going to sand through it basically to find any imperfections, and then the final primer coat will be done a little more carefully. Also, the decks are getting completely reefed out, recocked, and resanded. So a couple of drops of paint here and there aren't going to be the end of the world. Actually, it's looking remarkably good. Some sections even better than I would have imagined. Up here, this is almost ready for finished paint. Looking really good. That and the second coat of varnish on, looking so nice. Now I just run out to Geordie and do more of the same. Well, it won't be quite as satisfying because it's sanding. Somehow I try to keep one hand relatively clean while the other hand does the dirty work. All right. Oh yeah. Gotta get the high spots on the way up. Well, there we go. Does that look nice? Of course, this is only the tongue oil, so it actually won't look nice for very long because it's just not a robust finish, but it is a great starter first coat, which I've talked about thousands and thousands of times. A lot of the modeling you see is places where I had to sand through the previous varnish right into the mahogany to deal with some damage, and as a result, of course, it's much darker because the mahogany is red underneath, but it won't take long for the sun to equalize all that out. Anyway, now the other side, the cockpit, and several coats of varnish. Now this is just the first rough sanding. After I hand sand all these joints out, I'll have to go over this again and make sure any little imperfections are sanded out, but this will be 95, 98, 99% of it. It's actually in great shape, the wood, and all the bungs are good. They didn't pick up any moisture. This is going to come out really, really well. Hello and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week, coming to you this week from the bridge deck of MV Geordie, anchored snugly here in Genoa Bay, British Columbia. Lovely, lovely evening to sit up here. What a messy week. Just an absolutely messy week. So much sanding and digging and sorting out. Anyway, you'll see all about it over the next little while. Okay, today is Sidetracked, an ISA, which is a India Session Ale from a brewery right here in Duncan, which is the closest town to here, Red Arrow. Oh yes, well, right out of the shower, which feels so good because I've spent the afternoon sanding here on MV Geordie, and well, that's just so messy. Cheers. Just a perfect beer. An ISA, India Session Ale, IPA, India Pale Ale. You have to know your beer to know the difference. It's just perfect for a little early evening relax. Okay, last week's winner of a Travels with Geordie t-shirt is William Botham. William, get a hold of me and we'll make sure you get your Travels with Geordie t-shirt. Congratulations and cheers. Oh yeah, that is actually really growing on me. Okay, nothing more this week except you need a word of the week. And it came to me as I was saying it. The word of the week this week will be mess. You know what to do with it. Cheers.